Hello South Africa, and welcome to the 6th edition of Q'nAcast on this, the 14th day of the 21-day lockdown period. Q'nAcast is your twice weekly information session where we bring on exciting guests to share information with you around the virus and issues relating to it. And we're very lucky today. I've got two great guests. One is in studio with me, our Chief Whip, Natasha Mazzoni, and we're going to be talking a little about parliamentary oversight and the importance of that. And then we've got Megan, who is here in Cape Town, but she'll be joining us in the studio via Skype. And Megan's got a positive story to tell about coronavirus. We hear a lot of negative story. Megan and her family have recovered from the coronavirus. They've been through it. So we're going to be asking a few questions around that. But also please feel free to send in questions on the live that you'd like us to put to Megan if you've got any questions about what it's like to have the coronavirus. Remember as well that you can continue to submit questions that you would like answered on our dedicated email, which is coronavirus@da.org.za. That's coronavirus, one word, @da.org.za. And remember, there's a lot of great information, replays of the show, frequently asked questions and information sheets at our dedicated coronavirus website, which is www.da.org.za/defeating coronavirus. That's defeating coronavirus, one word. Please feel free to send us through. Reminder as well that we have set up a dedicated line to deal with specific brutality or infringements on civil liberties by anyone in the security services. That's the SAPS or the Army. If you are the victim of this or you witness this, please send it through to us at reportpoliceabuse@da.org.za. That's reportpoliceabuse@da.org.za. Or you can WhatsApp it through to our dedicated WhatsApp line that we have manned by staff to process your complaint. That's 067 977 9324. Right, today we're going to look at our latest statistics, and the latest statistics that we've received from the Department of Health, that we now have 1,845 confirmed cases of the coronavirus in South Africa, with sadly 18 confirmed deaths. And obviously, again, our condolences to all of the friends and family of those who have lost their lives due to the coronavirus. And these really bring home how serious this virus is, and how important it is that we abide by the regulations, that we stay at home during the 21-day lockdown period, we flatten the curve, and we slow the spread. We're not going to beat this virus if we disobey the lockdown regulations and we continue to pretend life is normal. Life is not normal. This virus has deadly consequences for South Africa, and so we must all heed the lockdown recommendations. Remember as well, washing your hands, making sure you're keeping your hands sanitized, avoid touching your face, and of course, if you can get out, if you are going out to the shops, or you're going to perform one of the essential services, or you're going to access medical care, remember to wear a mask. It doesn't have to be a surgical ward quality mask, just something to cover your face to help stop the spread. Remember as well that it is important that we take this lockdown seriously. It's absolutely essential that we flatten that curve and stop the spread. Right, I'm going to move now to my first guest today, and that is someone who I'm sure needs no introduction to South Africa, and that's the Chief Whip of the DA in the National Assembly, Natasha Mazzoni. Natasha, welcome.
Together, where we swear to fight and uphold for the Constitution of South Africa, and part of that is through robust oversight. So at a time when the country is going through a crisis, our oversight role becomes even more important, because we have to make sure that there are no infringements on our civil liberties. And although we know that our civil liberties are curtailed, it has to be done in a free and fair manner, and that South Africans are still getting services and still getting everything they need from their country. So we've seen around the world, most parliaments have shut down in terms of the physical appearance in the Houses of Parliament, and many have gone into the virtual realm, which is exactly what the DA is fighting for. We have, as members of Parliament, we are provided with laptops and iPads and cell phones and data contracts, and what we're asking for is for Parliament to still operate, to still exercise their oversight role, and do it virtually on various platforms, which have worked very well across the world, and we see no reason why Parliament shouldn't be following what's best practice in the world.
Yeah. I'm sure, I mean, we've chatted about this at great length, Natasha, around, why Parliament should be meeting now as well to start planning for what the post-lockdown South Africa looks like. And you want to just talk through what some of the committees could be and should be doing at this particular time?
Well, John, I think the fact of the matter is the world post-COVID is never going to be the same again. We're going into a different way of operating. We're going into a different sphere of our economy. We're going into a different sphere of our social structures. People are going to be rather traumatized by what's happened, and we need to be looking at that. So certainly departments like the Committee for Health, that we need to be meeting virtually to make sure that our health capacity is viable and actually being kept up to standard. The Social Development Cluster needs to be meeting urgently to make sure that SASA is working according to plan. The Police Committee needs to be meeting regularly to make sure that there are no infringements with the policing that's going on across our country, that's been increased dramatically. And certainly the Finance Committee needs to be meeting, because I think we all know what a drastic effect this coronavirus has had on our economy. The fact that so many of us can't go to work, our small and medium enterprises are shut down at the moment, and there's going to be a dramatic effect on business and the way we do business in South Africa. Yeah. So we need to be focusing on what is life post-COVID-19.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure as well that you'd share with me the disappointment that we've had this week with the announcement by the Tourism Minister that the aid in terms of the tourism industry is only going to be provided in terms of the BBBEE requirements. Now, obviously, this is greatly concerning for us because the virus really knows no race, it knows no class, and it doesn't discriminate between businesses. And so this makes no sense. What do you think is behind this? Why now are they putting this in place? And what impact do you think it's going to have on businesses? 95% of the businesses in that industry as well who actually would never qualify for that.
Well, John, I think you've hit the nail on the head. 95% of the businesses wouldn't qualify. So that means 5% of this enormous sector in our country will qualify, and 95% sit in the darkness not knowing what's going on. And I think what's most concerning is the fact that this committee refuses to meet. We've requested a meeting, and they've bluntly refused our shadow minister, which I think is most unfortunate. And given the fact that we have been told to come together as a nation, we've seen the most monumental coming together, the most unity that we've seen in a long time. For something like this to suddenly be thrown in the face of South Africans, it goes against everything that the President has asked us to do, which is show national unity, to come together as South Africans and all South Africans, and to look after one another. And this is the thing, that when 95% of the industry has no access to a fund that's been made available by very patriotic South Africans who have stepped up and taken a huge step forward in uniting South Africa, for this to be thrown in our faces, it's not only devastating to those who can't apply for the relief, but we have to think of the families that work for those and the whole community around that specific industry that now is just going to collapse because they cannot be afforded this opportunity.
I think that's also the point that the Minister Kubai is missing.
Absolutely.
And that is that it doesn't matter what the colour of the owner of the business is. You've got to look at the employees. And surely that when you're looking at how you aid sectors, that you look at who are the biggest employers in the sector, how can we save the most jobs? We shouldn't be doing racial bean counting at a time of national crisis, particularly when I think there's been a really good spirit of South Africans coming together to combat the virus.
Absolutely, John, and it's a fundamental misunderstanding of the rules that are currently in place. And to me, there's nothing worse than if you point out an error, no one minds if the error has been made as long as it's rectified. But once the error has been pointed out and it's so blatant, then we expect the minister to react and to then start operating in a correct fashion. But a complete misunderstanding of what the regulations say, what their intended purpose was, and the way it's now negatively impacting the industry. And this industry, I mean, if a carrier's on like this, is going to be decimated. And you're looking at a 5 to 10 year recovery plan, which is, it's just not feasible.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure to share with all of you at home that we are not going to leave this matter here, and we've already briefed attorneys who will be looking at what potential legal challenges there are to this ridiculous situation where essentially you want to racially bean count who qualifies for assistance in the time of a crisis. This is not about empowerment, this is about assistance. It's like saying to people in a burning building, well, we're only going to save one or two of you for based on the color of your hair or the color of your skin. It just doesn't make sense. If there's aid and people qualify, it must be given regardless. So we're not going to leave it there. Tash, back to Parliament now. Parliaments around the world. Let's look. I mean, Brazil on the 20th of March had their first virtual parliamentary session. But that's not the only way they could do it. There's other things like quorums. Do you want to talk around?
Absolutely, John. Thank you. In Parliament, you'll often see that the benches aren't full, and that's because MPs have other work that they do. They might be on oversight with their committees or anything like that. So nothing necessitates an entire caucus to be in Parliament at all times. And there are rules and guidelines which we follow. We're very into the rules in the DA. And there are things that you can do as a caucus, for example. Our caucus is going to be meeting virtually because we have MPs all over the country, and we've managed to set up a system where all the DA MPs and the members of the National Council of Provinces will be meeting to have a brief from you, their leader, and the chairperson of their caucus next week. Now, Parliament could meet in that fashion. If we got to a situation where we actually had to physically be in Parliament and there was no other way but to have physical hot bodies in the seats of Parliament, we could look at things like pairing, which has been done in the past, where political parties would carry mandates for each other, or we could look at one person carrying the mandate of their whole party in a situation. And I think that we've proved our point as to how important this is because we've had a scare in Parliament. The last sitting of Parliament, the DA informed the Speaker that we would not be sending our entire caucus to Parliament because we didn't think it was safe, and we were adhering to the call of the President to socially distance and to stay at home because it's the safe thing to do. So we had 5 members of the DA caucus who were scattered in our benches, so we socially distanced, and we were kept safe, and we also kept other members of Parliament safe in case any of us were carriers and we didn't know at the time. And we've had a scare that some people that were in that Parliament may have been infected, and they could have infected everyone unknowingly. So, John, it's just not worth taking the risk and putting our families and our communities at risk because, as MPs, we perform an essential service, and there are times that we have to go out into the communities, so we can't take the risk of being carriers without realising that we're being carriers. So the rules of Parliament make it very easy for us to actually operate, and we are assisting Parliament as much as we can to set up these virtual platforms, and I think that we need to look at it as an advantage, not as a disadvantage, and embrace the industrial the digital revolution that we're going through.
Yeah, well, I think it's important, and I think what a lot of people miss here is that the executive arm of state is continuing as normal. We've seen the President admirably convening his cabinet meetings via online platforms. Have you heard from the Speaker at all during this period? Have you had any interaction from her? Or
No, John. I unfortunately I haven't. I have had interaction with the ANC Chief Whip. We're on a forum, a Chief Whip's forum, so we've had contact there, but no contact from the Speaker. And I'm eagerly awaiting contact with the Speaker because I'm eagerly awaiting the setup of these virtual platforms. John, you host your cabinet every second day on a virtual platform, and it works exceptionally well, and it keeps the wheels turning. And I think in a time of crisis, more so than ever, the wheels of Parliament need to be kept turning, and there are these platforms available to us. So we are definitely pushing the Speaker to make sure that she joins us on these platforms.
I think it's going to be very important as well as we go forward, because the debate now starts around: do we extend the lockdown or do we stop the lockdown and get everyone back out on the 16th? How does it look? And we've seen some of the experts starting to question whether we should lock down, continue to lock down or not. But obviously, these are tough choices that need to be made because they have effects on the economy. But they're also people's lives that we've got to watch. So it's going to have to be a very, very important balancing point. So it would be quite useful, I think, for the portfolio committees of Parliament to get a report back from the executive through their ministers on what has worked, what hasn't worked, and what would be required to whether to justify continuing with the lockdown or not.
Absolutely, John. It's the only way that you have a sort of a participation in this huge decision-making endeavour that we're going on. And let's be honest, I mean, no one enjoys a lockdown, but we know that there's a necessity for it, and we were trying to flatten the curve. So what we need to know now is, what is the effect of the lockdown? Have we actually flattened the curve? What is the post-lockdown sort of lookout? What are we looking at? If we don't go into a full breaking of the lockdown, do we go into a partial lockdown? These are all questions that the portfolio committees have to become intimate with, and they have to be advising the cabinet as to the way forward. And we know that the only way you get full participation, and by law, we're a multi-party democracy, and we're a multi-party parliament. So all parties have to have a say in this crucial decision that the president is going to take.
Well, I see Lillian's Limpo Chukudu. Lillian Limpo Chukudu has written in here, please address the plight of pregnant moms. And we're very happy to say that there has been some movement on this. As you know, we had Dean McPherson on the show last week, and he's been putting a lot of pressure on allowing shops to sell whatever is in the shop, not just the essential items, obviously excluding booze and the other things that have been specifically excluded. And one of the things was baby clothes. We now have received today notification that baby clothes and baby items are going to be able to be procured. So if you're going to the shop, if you're a newborn, if you're a new mother, you've got a newborn at home, or you're expecting a newborn, you can now purchase baby items at those particular stores. So Limpo, I hope that answers the question that you've sent through. We're going to now cross over to Megan, who's joining us in the studio today from Constantia, and I think a good news story. There are lots of figures on TV we hear all the time of people who've contracted it, deaths, etc. Welcome, Megan, to CoronaCast and South Africa. This is Megan, who's a coronavirus survivor. Megan, do you want to just start off telling us a little bit about your journey and how you contracted it and how you knew you had coronavirus? I think that's what a lot of South Africans at home get, a bit of a tickle in the throat, or they have a bit of a cough, and immediately you're asking yourself, well, is that you, corona? Is it a symptom? Do you want to just take us through how you knew this was different to a normal flu?
Yeah, sure. So we went on a family holiday to Switzerland that we've been looking forward to for ages. And while we were in Switzerland, we didn't go out very much. We spent a lot of time cooking at home. The one night that we went out, we went to a very busy bar, and we reckon after a bit of family debate that it was that night that we contracted the virus. And 2 days later, we all started feeling sick. Headaches and fever. I had very sore, stiff muscles. And we just thought we had cold. We were in a snowy part of Switzerland and going inside a warm chalet and back into the cold snow, etc., is a perfect sort of breeding ground for a common cold or for flu. So we just assumed we had that. So anyway, it became time to come home. It wasn't great traveling home because we all felt terrible. And when we got home, that was the Friday night before the president had given his speech announcing this national crisis. And so it was really like the week or so that we were away where the coronavirus was building in significance in South Africa. And my brother said, I'm going to go and get a test. And we all said to him, you are being a drama queen. There's no way you've got the coronavirus. This is just the flu. So anyway, he went and got a test, and 24 hours later the test came back and it was positive, and we were completely shocked. We couldn't believe it. I don't think we knew how to digest that information. I can definitely say it took me 2 days to really wrap my head around what that even meant. So yeah, we got sick and we actually didn't know that we had corona. We found out that we had the coronavirus only when my brother tested positive.
Sure.
Which then led us to going to get tested ourselves.
So tell us what the test entails. There's been lots of stuff on video, the man with the earbud up his nose, etc. You want to tell us what is the procedure, or what is it like? Is it something to be nervous of, or is it relatively easy?
It's definitely not fun, I'll put it that way. Our first test included a blood test as well, which I'm sure everyone has had at some point in their life and they understand. But the swabbing, I don't know what the technical term is for that test, but they basically need to get a swab sample from the back of your throat, and they take one in the back of your throat, which is very uncomfortable, kind of induces your gag reflex and makes you cough. It's not fun. But then there's another one where they take a really long earbud and they put it into your nose, but it's not just your nostril that they're trying to get the sample from, it's kind of like further back. So they've really got to get that thing in there, and then once they're in there, kind of twist it around. So it's not a feeling I don't think anyone would have needed to have before. It's very strange.
So Megan, who got tested and who came out positive in your household?
My brother got tested, he came out positive.
Yeah.
And then myself, my brother's girlfriend, and my dad went to go get tested. We all came out positive. My mom came with us to be tested that day, but she just developed such anxiety while we were inside the waiting room to be tested, because there were some other people there who were also waiting to be tested, and we were pretty sure we were positive, and she just kind of like got freaked out by the whole thing, and so she didn't get tested that day. But then we all got tested, I think it was 2 weeks later, 2 weeks after that, and we all tested positive again.
Positive again, yeah. So tell me, what are the symptoms like? What do you get tired? Is the headache as bad as they say it is?
Yeah, the symptoms are very flu-like symptoms. Your headache and fever, which is common for every flu. My headache was bad. It was really bad, as well as my fever. And then the more corona-specific symptoms are the dry cough, which we all had, and then the very stiff muscles in the back of your neck and on the top of your shoulders. That was all common amongst us. Extreme fatigue. Even when our bad symptoms like the headache and fever subsided, the extreme fatigue continued, I would say, for another week, for everyone at least, after that. And then I also had a sore throat and swollen glands. And my brother and my dad, who had it worse than we did, they had a loss of appetite quite badly, and they also lost their sense of taste and smell.
Okay. And what did you take for this? Was there anything you were given to take, or do you just take something to treat the symptoms?
No, it's a bit just like the flu virus. There's nothing, antibiotics don't work for a virus. There's nothing that you can take for the virus itself. You can just take medication to ease your symptoms. So we took painkillers for the headache, and I had a throat spray for my throat. But really it just comes down to staying hydrated and resting and just allowing your body to recover and allowing your immune system to fight it off naturally.
Okay. And so, I mean, was there a great deal of anxiety in the household? Were people worried the symptoms would get worse, or that it would get more serious? Or did you start to feel better the moment you were resting, hydrating, and taking the meds?
Yeah, look, I think we were very stressed when we first found out, because we didn't really understand what getting the coronavirus really meant. We also were very worried for my dad and my brother, whose symptoms did get very bad at one point, and there was one day where the family was very, very concerned. But I think what gave us huge peace of mind was the fact that our doctor from the Department of Health was contacting us every single day, checking up on every single one of our symptoms every day. And so he was always kind of in reach, and we could speak to him, and that gave us a lot of reassurance through this whole thing.
Sure.
I think without that, it would have been a lot more difficult to go through.
Yeah. So we've got Molly Kruger here, Megan, who wants to know how you got infected. Can you pinpoint where it was, and who was first to get the symptoms?
So who do we blame, kind of thing. It was, as I said, we didn't go out a lot when we were away. cooked most of our meals at home and kept to ourselves. But the one night, it was my brother's birthday, and so we went out to a pub, very, very busy pub. And I'm pretty sure it was that night that we all must have contracted it in one go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's obviously very easy. It's so easy to transmit it, and I suppose anyone who had it, could have been sneezing or coughing onto any of the surfaces there. And we know that the virus can stay alive on surfaces, not like other viruses that exit the body and die almost immediately. It can linger on surfaces. So even the act of opening a door or touching a surface in a place like that, I suppose, is a heaven for a virus to be able to spread.
Yeah, and that's exactly why even before lockdown, we were instructed to minimize group contact, because that is a prime place for the virus to spread.
Yeah. We've got a question here from Eula. She wants to know, can anyone go for a test at a private lab or Dis-Chem without a letter from the doctor? So what was the procedure you found? Did you phone your GP first, or did you go straight to one of the government labs?
So my brother went straight down to the hospital. We've got a Mediclinic down the road.
Okay.
And I suggested that he phone beforehand, because, if you are positive, you don't want to just be waltzing into a hospital taking the virus with you. So he phoned beforehand and then went down to the hospital. They cleared out the waiting room, made sure no one else was in there. But from what I hear, you can't just arrive at a hospital and get a test. You have to be referred by a doctor. So I think a lot of doctors are doing virtual consultations. If you go direct to the testing center, I'm not sure if this criteria still applies, but I know that the criteria for a long time was they would only test people who had been overseas or traveled within 14 days or were showing significant symptoms.
Well, I think they're going to try and broaden the testing now, and they've got these community health workers that are going out to do the screening. So they'll do a screening at home of people, and then obviously if those people show symptoms, they would be moved off to go in there. Then Megan, have you had any follow-up testing? And I've got someone say, have you been contacted about plasma donations because you're no longer positive?
So no, we haven't been contacted about plasma donations, and I actually asked my doctor from the department if that was happening, but I'm not sure that it's happening in South Africa yet.
Okay, great.
If it is happening, I'd love to be involved, but I'm not sure that that's happening yet. Yeah.
Now, Megan, obviously the economic impact on people is something that's often overlooked in these things. And we were chatting a little bit earlier, and you spoke about the fact that you've got some small businesses, and it's obviously made business very difficult to operate in this time. How has it affected your work life and what you've been able to do remotely from home? You want to just take us through some of those?
Well, I've got a factory with, we're manufacturing, so our factories had to close because of lockdown, which is obviously going to have huge effect on us. I will be honest and tell you that it's taken me a while to wrap my head around what this is really going to mean for my business. I mean, I said, I wrote a blog post actually about what this experience is like for me, and I just think we've never had to deal with anything like this as business owners, and this is the real tough side of being an entrepreneur, is those days where you just don't know what you're doing, and having to figure it out as we go along. When I first got back, when we got back from being overseas, I was looking forward to going to work on the Monday, but then quickly realized that wasn't going to be possible. I had to completely isolate and quarantine myself. So I haven't been into my business for a long time now, which obviously has huge impact on our business.
Yeah, I can imagine. Megan, obviously, thank you for sharing your journey as well. And I just want to give a shout out to Megan's. Got an Instagram account, and it's at Living Corona Positive on Instagram. But she's also got a great blog post. And I really would encourage South Africans who are interested to know more, to understand the journey of what Corona has been. And that's at www.livingcoronapositive.com. So there's both Instagram and on the blog post, and I would really encourage South Africans to go on there and have a look at that. Megan, I've got a question here. From Dimakatso, he says that he's confused because he's always got headaches, but how will he know he's infected? So do you know there's a difference between ordinary headache and the headache you got with corona, or is it the fact that it's matched with all the other symptoms that gives you the key?
It's so tough to tell. The symptoms they appear different in everyone. I mean, every one of the family members, our symptoms were slightly different. From my brother's girlfriend who showed symptoms for one day to my dad who had a full 3 weeks of really being man down, full of symptoms. So it's different for everyone. And I think what I've told everyone who has brought me that question is that's what our doctors are there for. Only really the doctors can diagnose or suggest whether we need to be tested. But I think regardless of that, if you feel that you're showing symptoms and it could possibly be corona, just self-isolate and quarantine yourself. I think that's the best thing that you can do in order to help stop the spread. I
think that's the big message there. So, I mean, if in doubt, make sure you get a screen. And I know in the Western Cape provincial government's got an online screening test. There's a set of questions that you plug in there, your symptoms, and then it gives you an answer saying whether you should go and get tested or not. But if in doubt, test, I think. But also, as I say, I think it's very interesting what you're saying about it manifesting differently in different people. And, obviously that's something that's I haven't heard of before, that it's not necessarily common to everybody, and everyone experiences these symptoms differently.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you've got a very strong immune system and you're a very healthy person, you're going to be able to fight off this virus a lot better than someone who is immune compromised or not healthy at all. And that's totally in line with the younger generation. I mean, apparently kids, they can get the virus and you don't even see their symptoms. They don't show them because they manage to fight it off. Whereas we're worried about our parents' generation, them getting it, because their immune systems, they're more tired, they're slower, they're not as strong, they've been around a long time. So, you've really only got your immune system to fight this virus off with. There is no cure, there is no medication for the virus itself. So, it's important that we all use this time during lockdown to stay healthy, to stay hydrated. I think keeping positive and being kind to everyone around you and supporting your family or whoever you're doing lockdown with is so important, and has a huge impact on you being able to get through this if you do contract the virus. It's just about staying healthy and looking after ourselves during this time in every way.
I think that's a great point you make about people being kind. You don't want to do is start stigmatizing the virus. It affects people across the spectrum, and what you don't want to do is to stigmatize the virus. And I think you make a great point there about us just being kind to each other and considerate, and making sure we're following up on people living alone, etc. I think that's very, very important information that you've given there. Megan,
but I wanted to make a point on that. If you have any friends who are corona positive, we want to support them to enable them to stay quarantined and away from having to go to public places. So you can help them out by doing their grocery shopping for them, getting meals to them, and just keeping in contact with them so they know that they're not alone, because it can be a scary thing if you do test positive.
Yeah, I can imagine. And that the scary thing, I suppose, and that's the thing that I think has brought the anxiety for so many of us, is that if you get the common flu, you go to get a Carenza, or you get a certain disease, you can get a cream, or you can get treatment. I think the scary thing for this is that in the deeper manifestations of it, there is no treatment, and nobody's immune to it. I mean, the Prime Minister of Great Britain is in ICU as we speak, suffering from coronavirus. There is no vaccine yet. There is no medication that you can take yet. And I think that's what's got a lot of people really scared. So I think your point about staying healthy is important. So did you eat healthier during the period? Were there any foods that you stuck to try and help boost your immunity?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we are a healthy family, and we're all fit to start with. So we all have good, healthy immune systems, but we definitely focus on staying hydrated is the most important thing. Even if you lose your appetite, because that is one of the symptoms of this virus, It's so important to stay hydrated, and you can do that in many ways, not just by drinking water, teas, soups, juices, staying away from the alcohol. And then, of course, definitely focusing on eating a wide variety of foods, fresh, colorful foods, vegetables and fruit, of course. They are definitely taking vitamin C as a supplement is a good idea. But if you can't get hold of supplements, you can get enough vitamin C from your diet if you just focus on eating colorful, vibrant fruits and vegetables. So we definitely focused on eating healthy. Sure.
Megan, last question to you before we let you go. What are you missing the most during the lockdown period?
To be honest with you, I'm loving this time with my family. I live in a different suburb, so I don't really see them that often. So I'm actually just focusing on being grateful for that. But I would definitely say my kite surfing in the ocean.
Yeah, I think we're all craving outdoor activities. I think there's when we move out of this lockdown period, I think there's going to be a whole new sort of wave of fitness enthusiasts around the country, just so desperate to be out there in our beautiful South Africa, enjoying the outdoors. Megan, I want to thank you very much for sharing your journey, and thank you for the blogging and the Instagramming that you're doing, and thank you for being with us today to give a perspective on coronavirus, and that we can beat the virus, and that you can get through it, and that there are some positive stories here. So thank you very much for being with us today, and we wish you and your family good health as you go forward, and we hope that you'll be able to get out on that kiteboard at Blouberg soon, and back in the great outdoors. But thank you very much for making time to be with us today.
Thank you so much, guys. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And don't forget, folks, you can watch the blog at livingcoronapositive.com. And Megan has a great Instagram account called Living Corona Positive. So give it a follow and follow Megan and her family's journey as they make their way through that. Quite an inspiring story that I thought, Tash.
I was just thinking, John, Megan has really made my day. Every time you put on the news or you go on social media, there's something so frightening. And I love Megan's whole attitude, the way she's looking at this. Yes. And I read something this morning that said, positivity in the time of a crisis isn't naivety, it's leadership.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about the leadership that Megan is showing without even realizing her whole attitude towards the illness. Megan's really inspired me, and I'm feeling a lot better about things than I was this morning. It just goes to show too much social media.
Yeah, I think it would be nice actually for them to include in the statistics those people who've recovered as
Absolutely.
well. We hear every night on the news how many people have died and sort of how many people are infected. What we're not hearing is how many people are being healed and how many people have beaten the virus.
Absolutely.
And obviously, I think that's it shows people there is a way through it, provided you do what Megan and the family did. You do the self-isolating, you lock down, you ensure that you abide by, and you're eating healthy and looking after yourself.
Absolutely.
Tash, thank you very much for being with us today, and I'm sure it won't be the last time we have you on. I'm sure there's a lot of work that Parliament has to do, and we'll obviously continue the pressure to get Parliament's committees to meet. I think that's the message that we want to leave people with around that particular segment.
Absolutely, John. Just to put the public's mind at rest that we are working, we are holding everyone to account as we always do. The DA is full steam ahead and meeting on digital platforms, doing what we need to do, and continuing the fight for all South Africans and making sure that in a time of crisis we look after South Africans. And be positive about our country and be positive about.
Well, that's a nice thing. There's so many nice positive messages coming through here from all of you at home, and wishing Megan and her family well. And I think a lot of people enjoyed today's segment. But that's all we've got time for in this slot on CoronaCast. Remember, this is a special broadcast because tomorrow is Easter Friday, Good Friday, and so we wish all Christian South Africans who will be celebrating Easter this weekend a very happy Easter. May you be blessed. And I think the messages that the Saviour sent to all of us through his word about tolerance, about kindness, and about togetherness are perhaps more apt now. And the big message about Easter is around sacrifice. And just as the lessons that we were taught around sacrifice by the Saviour's message to us, there's a lot of sacrifice that we have to make as citizens at this particular time, but it is for a good cause. So hope you have a happy Easter, and of course all of our Jewish South Africans who are celebrating their Pesach, their Passover, we wish you well over this particular period. Our next CoronaCast will be taking place next Tuesday, back in its traditional slot on a Tuesday and a Friday at 2 p.m. I've had a few questions come through today. What is the Western Cape doing? So those people who've sent those questions will be really happy to know that my next guest is going to be the Western Cape Premier, Alan Winde, who's going to be talking to us around the Western Cape provincial government response to the coronavirus and combating it. And I'm sure all those smokers out there who are desperate for their ciggies are going to be very keen to ask Alan some questions around when they'll be able to get their cigarettes during the lockdown period. South Africa, wish you well over this long weekend. May you have a wonderful time with your family and friends. And remember, we're going to beat this virus, and we're going to beat it when we come together to flatten the curve and to stop the spread. So keep safe. We look forward to seeing you next week, Tuesday at 2 p.m. for CoronaCast. Stay safe out there, South Africa. I thought that went quite well today.